Welcome back to the Morning Brew here on CNC3. I am Natalie Legore. On last weekend, when the board of the TTHTI put out its press release that it's looking to wind up the institution, social media was abuzz with what's going to happen to the students, their investments, their future, and why. Why at this point? But the board said that with the pandemic, things have been difficult, and even before that, they were facing some challenges. Well, here to speak with us about the issue this morning is former chairperson of the board of TTHTI, Dennise Demming. Good morning to you, Ms. Demming.
Good morning, Ms. Legore.
Natalie.
And you could call me Dennise.
Okay, no problem. So, when you took reign of the board in 2018 of TTHTI.
No, 2017 I became chairman. I joined the board in 2016, but I became chairman in 2018.
Okay, you became chairman.
2017, oh sorry
right.
about the dates.
Just walk us a little bit through your period as a chairperson and even just being a board member.
Being a board member was a very, very enjoyable experience because I felt as if I was making a difference to the hospitality sector, which is extremely important in this country. And I felt that if we could transform customer service via the hospitality sector, we could transform this entire country. And then I was asked to become the chairman of the board. At that time, the government had changed its arrangements with regard to gate for all institutions, and TTHTI was one of those institutions in which there were some real difficulties. And we spent a lot of time trying to educate parents about the value of their investment in their children. We brought in banks, credit unions. We had a full session in which there was a discussion, a private discussion between parents and financial institutions to figure out how they could fund their children's education. Because funding your children's education is where Trinidad is moving to, and it's something that would have been difficult for a number of parents because the children who go to TTHTI tend to be those children who have not opted for the traditional careers and the traditional academic approaches. So oftentimes their parents have not been saving towards funding their children's education. So we spend a lot of time with that. It was a very intense period because I was a chief spokesperson on behalf of the board with the parents and with all stakeholders trying to refashion and redesign an approach to education that was not popular in our country. And so that created some difficulty, but it was something that I invested a lot of time in simply because I do believe that education is the lever that will move us from one place to another.
Yet we saw in the press release from the TTHTI where it's seen that the government has starved it of funds since 2017. Now, if the government removed the gate, as chairperson, is it that the government still offered a subvention to the institution?
There were still subventions, but the difficulty at the time was there was a big time lag between when you had your operating expenses and when you recovered the gate funds.
Okay, so, but in terms of the institution, though, are you aware of financial challenges within the institution even before the removal of gates?
No, I'm not aware of that because I was not involved in the institution before 2016. Although when I came on board, the accounts showed that there had been 2 years, I think 2013 and 2014, in which the audited accounts were not completed, but I saw management accounts for all of the other ensuing years. And the financial difficulties really under my tenure was as a result of that deficit in its return of gate funding. You know, if the government owes you money, then your operating costs become extremely difficult. Any business that has outstanding debts and people are not paying them will have some real trouble.
Any idea as to why the government wasn't paying the subvention to TTHTI during this period?
I don't know. I don't know what the reasons were, but during this period, we spent a lot of time writing to the government, and attempting to get the funds. I don't know why the government would not be paying the gate funds.
And the communication was through the Ministry of Education.
The communication was through the Ministry of Education, yes.
But when you wrote to the Ministry of Education, they didn't forward any reason as to why monies weren't forthcoming to run the institution?
I don't know how much experience you've had with a number of our ministries, but quick response and even any response is a difficulty. And at that time, as chairman, I acted through the CEO. So that I saw the correspondence. So I'm not sure, but I don't know. What is it you're trying to get at with that kind of questioning? Because those questions really should be directed to the Ministry of Education.
No, I'm just asking because if you write to the ministry, then I would expect that there would be a response, suggesting, well, why funding isn't coming, when it is coming, whatever the response would be. So that's why I asked. All right, so in terms of the former CEO, Brian Fronting, so you said you liaised through the CEO with the correspondence to the Ministry of Education. Fine. But what do you think brought it to this point? Do you think it's just a subvention or there's more than that would have caused the winding up of the institution?
There's a lot more to the subvention and the gate issue. I recall the former Minister of Education describing the board as illegitimate, and he did say in public that he has sent the matter to the Attorney General. And that was when I became quite interested in what was happening and realized that there's a history with regard to TTHTI and the hospitality sector. And there had been a memorandum of understanding that was negotiated by Bill Aguiton, the late Bill Aguiton, and the IDB, in which there was a $2 million investment in TTHTI in order to transform the institution. And I think, I'm not sure, I think it goes back to that. So it goes back to issues of ownership. It goes back to issues of board appointments. So those are the things that unfortunately were predated my participation in the board, and they may have been factors which would have brought the tension between the ministry. But all of that is very much the past. I would really like us to be looking at what's the real impact of a permanent closure of an institution that has a more than 40-something year history in this country, because it really speaks to lost opportunities for about 700 persons, especially young women. So to me, we ought to be focusing on how do we mitigate against the potential negative impact of the permanent closure of this school, because this school was the go-to school for the region. It was the biggest regional institution that trained young people for the hospitality industry. So losing that is losing a tremendous opportunity. It's also an opportunity that we've lost, that we would have got foreign exchange. It wasn't a big inflow of foreign exchange, but there was an inflow of foreign exchange because we were the go-to school. While I was there as chairman, we'd started some discussions with a Nigerian person who was looking at the school for that kind of training opportunity. So, Trinidad continues to shoot ourselves in the foot when we permanently close institutions. We lose organizational resilience, which is really that ability of an organization to anticipate, prepare for, respond, and even adapt to incremental changes in the marketplace. And we're at a time in which COVID is bringing us to our knees. So permanent closure of another institution, to me, is really not an approach. It's not a desired approach. I worry that as a society, we seem totally unable to be involved in collaboration. How could we collaborate to have an outcome that is best for both of us? You and I are sitting here talking about a memorandum that goes back to 1996. which was predated by another arrangement in 1972. We should be talking about how can we look at the future and look at what we have as assets of a country and ensure that those assets are used in a way that benefits the entire country. You know, so to me, this is an extremely sad position that we've arrived at.
And I think most people will agree with you. Of course, there has been a petition started to save the institution. What I found kind of curious, though, is that on speaking to people who worked at the institution, they were saying they weren't sure what's going to happen because no internal communication was given to them. It's just a press release that they had, like the rest of us, the rest of TNT, you know, to say this is what was going to happen.
And that is unfortunate. I'm not involved, so I cannot comment on why would you not engage in internal communication. But you know, Natalie, all of that is symptomatic of how we do things in Trinidad. We do have a very patriarchal approach that in which we say to people, well, this is what we are going to do, and tough. You just fix yourself. As opposed to how do we collaborate internally and externally with all of our stakeholders and say, listen, we're in trouble. How can we get out of this trouble? That to me is just symptomatic of the wider society, a society in which people make decisions and then advise that these are the decisions that we've made, as opposed to a society in which we embrace each other and say, let us come to some kind of negotiated solution. We do not take a solution-focused approach to any of our problems. So, you know, maybe it's about time that somebody takes leadership and demonstrates that we can collaborate, we can have a conversation, we can look for a solution together. Because when organizational change behavior tells you that when people are involved in finding the solution, they become vested in it, and they then ensure that whatever they negotiated or the collaborative solution, whatever that solution is, they ensure that they put their energy into ensuring that that solution is the right solution, and we protect the investment that we've made in finding a solution. So to me, it's an opportunity. It's unfortunate, but it's a tremendous opportunity for us to change the way we do business.
Yeah, considering the outcry from the society and how people have responded to the release from the TTHTI, do you think changes will be made? Might be, just your opinion, there might be a change of heart, you know, to look at the situation again?
Well, I certainly hope, I'm an optimist by nature. I think that everything can work out in the best interest. I think this is an opportunity for leadership. And it's an opportunity for leadership between all of the stakeholders in order to come up with a solution. Because 400 to 700 children and young people who are generally they could be our at-risk population. We need to find solutions for them. And the only way we will find solutions for them is if there is some kind of negotiation between all of the stakeholders. And in this case, unfortunately, the stakeholders have baggage, so they need some kind of intervention. And this is on the part of both the ministry and TTHTI and the students and the Student Representative Council, because they do have a vibrant Student Representative Council, well, when I was there.
Yes.
And so that's the kind of collaboration we need to have to ensure that Trinidad's interests are best served. I mean, if you just dream of good customer service in this country where we are all treating each other with respect and there's dignity and there is a mutual understanding of where we're going. If that happens, anybody who comes to Trinidad will not want to leave.
Yeah.
But as it is, we are not focusing on that. We're focusing on little fights. And that to me is just absolutely unfortunate. With a population of 1.5 million, we don't have a lot of people. So it can't be an us and them. It has to be a we. You know, for a few years now, I have been talking about something called ACT, and it's called Accountability, Collaboration, and Transparency. And that is what is required. We need to be accountable to each other. We need to collaborate, and we need to be transparent. You know, so if we don't do those things, in another 10 years, we'll be closing down another institution. And every time you close an institution, that's an opportunity that is lost. It is also that we keep communicating to our Caribbean brothers and sisters that we can't do anything. They would be asking, so wait, is another hospitality institution? So this is just absolutely painful, but it is an opportunity.
Right. And we see that the Tobago arm of the institution is still up and running and seem to be doing quite well. So it makes one, wonder what are they doing so differently in Tobago from what they're doing in Trinidad?
Tobago is a different case in terms of its funding and in terms of how Tobago does things. I recall looking at the 2015 manifesto of the People's National Movement, and it said that it will transform the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association. And mind you, they're not sister institutions. They don't have a lot of collaboration. They're very separate institutions. And that manifesto said that it will transform it into a full university. I don't know what is the status of that, but again, what you have is plant and equipment and institutions in one island called Trinidad, and then you have an absolute duplication of the same thing in another island called Tobago. And we have, as a society, to start asking ourselves if that is the right model, and I certainly can make no comment on whether or not that is the right model, but I'm saying that we need to level the playing field and ensure that both islands are serviced in the things that we need. And the only thing, as far as I'm concerned, that we have now is the human resource. Energy and oil and gas are on its decline, and we have to start looking at how can we transform our people. And we have to ensure that we maximize our investment in both islands.
Right. You said that this is an opportunity, even during the time of COVID. If TTHTI is rejuvenated tomorrow, a decision is taken to continue with the institution outside of collaboration, what else do you think they need to focus on to ensure that the institution is successful?
Can I just reframe that question? Because I think what you're asking me is, what would be my dream of a future TTHTI? And I feel a little more comfortable thinking of it like that than being so absolutely prescriptive. And my dream of a future TTHTI would be, and this is a big dream, eh? You see that Chaguaramas Convention Center? That is a place that we can use our young people to help repair it, to bring it up to standard, and then to run it as a factory, as a place, as a real plant in which TTHTI and the students are running it. That Chaguaramas Peninsula has a high level of employment. There are a number of people employed in there. The shipbuilding sector has a lot of people. The Army has, the Defense Force. There's business in that Chaguaramas Center. There's no reason why a transformed TTHTI could not be the go-to restaurant on a daily basis for people who work in that Chaguaramas Peninsula. There's no reason why we couldn't have, and it's something I have put in the public domain before, a bus-only service that runs on time, and we are able to go from one place to another seamlessly. There's no reason why that couldn't happen. So in terms of dreaming of a future in which something like the TTHTI survives and thrives, it means just redesigning and refashioning that entire peninsula and making TTHTI the service provider for all services in terms of restaurants, whatever is needed. And that will give our young people a training opportunity. And Natalie, I focus on women. Because if the women in our country are not strong, and if we are not cared for, the society will continue to decay, because we are really the bedrock of the society. When I talk about that, it's women will suffer. Most of the women involved in the hospitality, most of the people involved in the hospitality sector are women. If you have women being trained in a particular way, that will bleed into the rest of the society. So you've asked me about what do I think, and I'm saying to you, here's an opportunity to dream differently and redesign TTHTI so that it satisfies the real needs of our country.
Ms. Demming, I want to thank you so much for bringing all that clarity and enlightenment to the conversation this morning. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're most welcome. Dennise Demming, former chair of the TTHTI, and she says there needs to be collaboration. Get the students involved and make TTHTI that place that you can go to daily. And we have to change our mindset towards how we do things. We take a break and we'll be back with you.